Like Armored Core cannot compete with other mech games. It can't compete with like Elden Ring. It can't compete with Zelda. It can't compete with like Xenoblade or anything Nintendo's putting in. FromSoftware is decades behind the rest of the industry with their like ragdoll physics and their poor animations and just poor visual design all around. Like ripping off Berserk near constantly. With FromSoftware is actually an extremely mid studio. I hope this is like the beginning of the end for FromSoftware.
What's up, everybody? I'm going to need you to strap in for this video because we'll be taking a look at a Nintendo fanboy completely rage about From Software and Armored Core, saying how Armored Core cannot compete with other mech games or Elden Ring. The cope is real. So without further ado, let's dive deep in this pile of dog shit.
The way things are looking right now, the successor to the Game of the Year 2023, the new entry in a beloved mecha IP from the greatest developers in all of gaming, FromSoftware, or as I like to call them, FromSlopware. These guys have put out a brand new game in Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, a game that everyone came out and said it was going to be a masterpiece, it was going to be a Game of the Year contender, it was going to be this, it was going to be that. It was going to be a glorious return to form to this PS1 classic, the greatest game ever made. Nintendo would never be able to put out a mecha game half as good as this Daemon X Machina, Xenoblade Chronicles, like Custom Robo. Like, they would never be able to put out anything nearly as good as Armored Core 6.
So first of all, who said that? Who said that Nintendo would never be able to make a game as good as Armored Core 6? And that's where the fanboy really loses me. It's like, it doesn't mean that you're excited for a game that you're shitting on all other games. Like, personally, I play on a PS5, I play on a Switch. I don't have an Xbox, but I want Xbox to do good because good competition breeds innovation. If your competitors are on point and they're putting out banger after banger, then you yourself will do extra efforts to make sure your games are quality. So I don't understand how he took people praising Armored Core as a personal attack against his Nintendo Switch.
And we're not even a full day in yet, and yet the backlash is already sipping in. This is another example of Sekiro, right? This is another example of what happens when you deviate even a little bit from the FromSoft formula. The fanboys get upset. They get wild. They get angry that this game is nothing like its slow-paced predecessors, right? Like Armored Core cannot compete with other mech games. It can't compete with like Elden Ring. It can't compete with Zelda. It can't compete with like Xenoblade or anything Nintendo has put out over the past couple of years. Like, this is the return to form for Armored Core 6, and the only reason that anybody is giving it any attention whatsoever is because of the FromSoft label, right? It has nothing to do with the game itself. It has nothing to do with whatever merits it has. Like, the only reason people are buying and playing this is because of the label, of the idea that this was going to be like some glorious new IP from FromSoftware, right? Oh man, I wonder why they call it Armored Core 6, because I never played the first 5 games. That is the average player, right? Like, they don't know about the series, they don't know anything about it. But they got hyped anyway because, oh man, it's FromSoftware, greatest developer in the world. Even though I don't play Nintendo games and don't care about them at all, I don't even know that like all the real developers for Armored Core went on to make Daemon X Machina. Like, if I don't know that, like, ignorance is bliss, I suppose you could say, when it comes to these kind of people. So many people, like, going into this, there was legit talk, like, this year that this was going to be, like, at the very least, a Game of the Year contender, even if it won, like, even if it didn't win. But, like, the way it's looking now, I don't think this thing has a shot at even being nominated.
So he's saying that Armored Core 6 doesn't even have a shot at getting nominated at the Game Awards. Personally, I don't think that Armored Core 6 ever had a chance to actually win because it's a mech game, the genre is niche. but the reception is extremely good, and I definitely do think that it will at least get nominated and will definitely pick up a couple awards, probably like Best Action Game of the Year. So I don't really understand why he's coping that much. Just because one company is doing good, it doesn't mean that your favorite company, Nintendo, is doing bad. But this guy actually shits on everything that is not Nintendo. He shits on Starfield, he shits on Baldur's Gate, he shits on Armored Core 6. It seems like the fanboyism and the console war is so deep inside him that he cannot put on an objective lens just for a second.
right? Like I think legit like Baldur's Gate 3 was bigger, like Final Fantasy like there are so many examples of games that I think resonated more with their target audience than Armored Core 6. Like it's a game that's alienating the FromSoftware fans, right? And without those guys, what you have is like a mid-action like an action game that looks like it could have been in the PS2 era that can't compete with its contemporaries. Like that is the situation we're in right now, where like FromSoft is decades behind the rest of the industry with their like ragdoll physics and their poor animations and like just poor visual design all around. Like ripping off Berserk near constantly with all of its imagery and like character design stuff like that. Like
I find it hilarious that he's saying that From Software has poor animations and poor visual designs all around, and this is coming from a fanboy for Nintendo. Nintendo themselves are really behind compared to the rest of the industry when it comes to graphical fidelity, and that's partially due to the weak hardware. But they don't really need it that much. Nobody comes to a Nintendo game for the awesome 4K graphics because they're just not there. Just how people don't go to From Software to see the most cutting edge facial animations that you would expect in The Last of Us Part 2. It's just not the reason why you play the game. So his criticism, in my opinion, is completely invalid.
like FromSoft cannot innovate. They cannot do anything new. And we saw this with Sekiro, right? Sekiro could have been like, a good new Tenchu game or a good stealth IP in general, but they had to just, take those Dark Souls elements and put them into the game and try to make it sell. And in the end it didn't work. It alienated Souls fans and like new players like myself just ended up being like angry with it for not being all that great. Like FromSoft is an overrated studio, right? Like 10 years ago, I think their prestige was going to something like, Konami with like the Metal Gear Solid games. Like both 4 and 5 got like a lot of unprecedented praise. Like it's the same situation. Like until we see like a Final Fantasy 16 moment where like From Software puts out a game that like everyone hates, especially the fanboys. Like this pattern is going to keep repeating itself, where people are going to keep pretending as if these games are top tier, that they're some of the best games ever made, some of the best games in the industry, when really they're not even really noteworthy. Like it's remarkable how today I have no interest in like playing Elden Ring. A game that was so heavily promoted, so praised, so hyped up. Like it's a game that like I won't even consider playing. Right?
Well, maybe because that type of game just isn't for him. People really have to stop doing this analogy that if I don't like it, it means the game is bad. Just to give you an example, I have no intention of playing Baldur's Gate 3. For me, there would just be too many cutscenes, and I'm not really into the turn based combat. But that doesn't mean it's bad. I can appreciate that a lot of people love it. It's just not for me. Same thing for Starfield. It looks like it could be a lot of fun for a lot of people if you enjoy space exploration. But for me, I know I wouldn't like it. So it's just not for me. It's that simple. Unfortunately, I think this guy is too far gone in the Nintendo fanboyism to be able to do some critical thinking.
Because I've played enough FromSoft to know that I don't like these games. And it's not because I'm a casual, it's not because I don't understand them. It's because I don't like them because they're not very good, right? That's what it comes down to. And more, like if you deviate away from the Souls formula right? If you move away from like that generic slow pace like action RPG, like if you move away from that, like you realize that like From Software is actually an extremely mid studio. They cannot create, they cannot innovate, they cannot do new things. All they can do is do the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and just have their like dedicated fanboys just lap it up.
To say that From Software is a mid studio is just laughable. That's just objectively wrong. And to talk about a company that does something over and over and over, just to use his favorite company as an example, Mario has been fighting Bowser for over 30 years. Link has been fighting Ganondorf for over 25 years, except one time where he fought Demise, and that was actually one of my favorite final bosses. Doing the same thing over and over with a twist is not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that From Software is actually innovating in every single game they bring out.
Like the dogs that they are. It's disgusting, right? I hope this is like the beginning of the end for From Software. It doesn't seem like that. Honestly, like I would argue, it's been going downhill since like Dark Souls 2, right? Like it's been a long time coming for people to like start being more critical of FromSoft, but like it needs to happen. Like more people need to come out and start addressing the problems with these games, addressing the issues with like these releases, and like start acknowledging there's some real problems with the studio and their partners. Like it is embarrassing that something like Sekiro or Elden Ring was able to win Game of the Year, right? Like it's just so ridiculous. Like it's so absurd that these games are just held in such high regard when like there's really nothing to them. They're boring, right? Like, you know, I'd much rather play Zelda. I'd much rather play Ys. I'd much rather play like Secret of Mana. Like, there are so many better games out there. Like, why Elden Ring? Why the obsession? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And more and more, I think more people are going to start seeing things my way. Like, I think the obsessive fanboy nature of Souls fans, it's eventually going to be like it's going to implode upon itself eventually, and it's just a matter of time when and how that happens. But I think a big part of it is the simple fact that there are better games out there, right? You know, Zelda is like the obvious example when it comes to like, you know, what's better, Elden Ring or Zelda. Like Zelda's better in like every possible way, right? The only reason you wouldn't think that is if you hadn't played both, right? Which seems to be the trend for a lot of Elden Ring fans.
I mean, why does one has to be better than the other? I don't get it. They're not even in the same genre. If you were able to put two games side by side, like let's say Tekken is better than Mortal Kombat, then yeah, I could understand that argument. But Elden Ring and Zelda are not even in the same universe. Elden Ring is a punishing Souls-like, while Zelda is a Zelda game. They have a couple similarities, of course, like the fact that both of them are open world. But besides that, these are two very, very different games. So I don't understand why he's trying to compare them. Like Elden Ring being good somehow makes his Zelda game being bad. I just don't get it.
Um, it's such it needs to stop, honestly. Like Armored Core 6 really should have gotten like a lot more skepticism than it actually got. People should have been like, you know, where's the gameplay? What is this game actually like? Like everyone just like, you know, threw up their hands and called it like a game of the year contender just because it had like the From Slap label on it. So people need to stop doing that. Like if you don't see gameplay, the game is not worth talking.
His last point was absolutely ridiculous. People were skeptic. We were asking for gameplay. And about 2 months before the game's release, Bandai Namco started opening the floodgates. We got gameplay trailers, story trailers, influencer marketings. We saw the game in action. And now that we have it in our hands, it's exactly what they promised and then some. So I have no clue what the hell he's talking about. Anyways, this guy is so obsessed with his precious little plastic box, it is definitely clouding his judgment. I hope you enjoyed the video. I just wanted to take a look, dive deep into the mind of a fanboy. It was entertaining to do, that's for sure. And if you did enjoy it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on all notifications, and I'll see you guys on the next video.